Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining NCIA's latest webinar. My name is Chris Olson, Education Manager at NCIA. Thank you for joining. I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, we have Steve Gongaware, Senior Vice President of Business Development at Management Science Associates, otherwise known as MSA. Joining him is his colleague Jennifer Wolfe, Client Relationship Director. And the title of this webinar is An Insight into Cannabis Attitudes, Uses, and Trends. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Steve.
Thanks, Chris. This is Steve Gongaware with MSA.
Hey everyone, it's Jen Wolfe.
So thanks again for the introduction and for inviting MSA to present today. Welcome to our webinar, An Insight into Cannabis Attitudes, Uses, and Trends. This webinar is being recorded and a link of the presentation will be sent to attendees within 1 week. The webinar will also be posted to YouTube and available via NCIA's website. I'd like to take this time to ask you to locate the chat window. You'll be using the chat window to ask any questions. Feel free to chat to us as soon as they come to your mind. We are going to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to quickly introduce this. Our webinar integrates multiple sources of data, analyzing their content in detail to answer some significant questions and make best use of cannabis industry resources. It's a midpoint in ongoing research that may help your research efforts build upon what you're pursuing. We're interested in your questions and interests, and we'll be happy to share with you what we're tentatively planning to pursue over the next 3 months, as well as the next 1 to 2 years. Cannabis is both a very old product and new industry. So I'm going to go ahead and review the agenda with you. So first, we're going to touch very briefly on the history of cannabis and CBD. Then we're going to delve into the CBD and cannabis attitude and usage study. That's based on data from our partner, Consumer Research Around Cannabis. And we're going to talk about attitudes, uses, and then break things out by state legal status. We're also going to present a segmentation of cannabis consumers who approve and disapprove of cannabis. At that point, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Jen, who will lead you through to the conclusion, covering marketplace measurement, both at retail and in dispensaries. And we're going to touch on the role of CBD and cannabis in severe pain, opioid use disorder, and the vaping crisis. Finally, we'll cover key findings and takeaways and answer your questions. So the history of cannabis and CBD. Cannabis has a long 4,000-year history of use medicinally, ritually, and recreationally. Cannabis was demonized as a Schedule I drug by the US in 1970. Approximately 20 cannabinoids have been identified as having medicinal benefits. In December 20 of 2018, the U.S. Farm Bill legalized hemp CBD for over-the-counter use, and it also named the FDA to guide, regulate, and control hemp CBD. So now we're going to jump right in to the attitude and use study. So here you can see background of the survey data that was used in this. Again, I'll call out our research partner, Consumer Research Around Cannabis. So it's a balanced survey of over 87,000 adults in 53 markets over a period of multiple waves. By the way, the timing of these surveys was 2018 and 2019. And you can see we've got them grouped into 3 segments here. So there's the fully legal cannabis states, and then we have medicinal only and illegal. Also, it's important to note that Illinois only become fully legal on January 1 of this year. So during the time of these surveys, it was still medically legal. So digging into some of the interesting results that have come out of these surveys, here we can see that most adults, approximately 69%, approve of either or both medicinal and adult use cannabis. Approximately 16% have no opinion, indicating potential opportunity for educational programs. And about 15% disapprove of any legalization. So I'll also point out here, you can see about 80% of responders who tried are likely to repeat use within the next year, which is very strong and is encouraging. So moving on to the top 5 reasons for using cannabis, you'll see that most of the top 5 important reasons are more medicinal than recreational. Certainly, you see the treatment of pain, dealing with stress and anxiety, recurring pain, helping with sleep, a form of relaxation. And the top 5 reasons for not using cannabis, opposition is based on principles and legality are the top reasons for not using. So digging in to cannabis usage type, also broken out by state legal status, it'll come to no surprise, I think, to the people in the audience that the flower or smoking cannabis is the most popular form of usage across all state legalities. Also notice there's little difference between medical legal and illegal use in most forms. More discrete forms are relatively more popular in states without recreational legal status. Continuing on, looking at cannabis usage by state legal status, you'll notice that cannabis usage averages 10 points higher in fully legal states. Also notice there's not much difference between medical legal and illegal, and there's a notable jump in current use when fully legal. Okay, looking into CBD usage, we can see here, respondents are saying 19% of people have tried over-the-counter hemp CBD, with 9% currently using. Also notice that 7% reported using it for a pet. This should not be a forgotten category. So turning to CBD purchase likelihood, 7% of respondents said they're likely to purchase CBD in the next 7 days, with 8% in the next 30 days. So with regard to CBD purchase frequency, we can see here, most CBD purchasers buy once a month or less, with 32% reporting once every 6 months or less. So in terms of the CBD purchase form, here you can see that edibles are the most popular form of CBD purchase, followed by topicals and tinctures. Edibles are an easy way to start, with products typically being lower in price. This slide shows us CBD purchase location. For current hemp CBD users, internet, e-commerce, and vape shops are the most popular purchase locations. Also of note on this slide, natural and specialty retailer includes dispensary. So in terms of reported CBD purchase by reason, we can see here that pain, anxiety, and stress relief are the most commonly cited reasons for using over-the-counter hemp CBD. You'll notice also 45% of respondents reported that it helps them to reduce smoking. So breaking this out by state, you'll see here again that we've segmented the CBD usage by state legality, so fully legal, medicinal only, and illegal. I'll bring up the point again that Illinois only became fully legal on at the start of this year, and you'll notice that it is the lowest among the fully legal states. And we do expect that to increase over time with the change in status from medicinal only to fully legal. In addition to this, the national average of respondents who reported purchasing CBD over the past year is 10%. I think this slide is particularly interesting. We broke out CBD users of tobacco. So here we can see that clearly that tobacco users are more likely to use CBD than the general population. For example, of the 22% of respondents who reported that they use cigarettes, 37% reported use of CBD. You can see the same pattern for other tobacco forms, including e-cigarettes and vaping, cigars, chewing tobacco, and pipe tobacco. So here we're looking at CBD, cannabis, and tobacco usage by state. Again, it's grouped by fully legal states, medicinal, and illegal. And so we can see here in medical legal and illegal states, CBD and vape usage rates are similar, while in legal cannabis states, CBD usage is higher. Okay, so now I'm going to move into some consumer segmentation. Consumer attitudes towards cannabis of approvers and disapprovers, with one of the main differences here is age. You'll see the disapprovers, male and female, 50 plus, more likely to be retired, where the approvers are more likely to be students or blue collar workers. So digging deeper into our consumer profile attitudes, it's not surprising that we find the targeted shopper is young, usually single, and has no children. They spend three or more hours daily online as their source of entertainment and news. And they're thrill seekers who enjoy taking risks. Our unlikely shoppers are usually over 50, own their own home, their kids are grown, not living it in the home. They don't spend much time online, preferring cable TV for their entertainment and print for their news. They also like to relax with leisure activities, and they're resistant to cannabis because of fear, harm, or disapproval. So with that, I'm going to hand the webinar over to my colleague, Jennifer Wolfe, who's going to talk to you about marketplace measurement at retail and in dispensaries.
Thanks, Steve. That's right. We're going to dig into marketplace measurement at both retail and dispensaries. Now let's kick this off with a look at Google search trends. We monitor these trends because we found that consumer buying patterns are preceded with internet searches. You can see here that the vape trend line is high, which is attributed to Juul and Juuling searches, which we all know the success that brand has had in the vape category prior to the vape crisis and flavor bans. Now, applying the same logic to other categories, remembering that search precedes purchase. The trends for CBD and cannabis indicate strong sales potential and show significantly that CBD itself is getting attention. This is an area that we will continue to monitor in 2020 and expect that CBD and cannabis trend lines will once again trend upward as time passes from the vape crisis. Similarly to how consumers responded during the 2015 caffeine crisis, where we saw the energy drink category sales decline and then rebound. This is important to note as we review sales trends in the market. When looking at marketplace measurement, we will review several data sources to provide a holistic view of the CBD and cannabis industry. It's difficult for any one data lens to get a strong understanding of market measurement, which is why MSA uses a combination of distributor shipment, retail scan, and consumer survey data, the first being distributor to retail shipments. This particular data allows us to measure the shipments to retail and the velocity, or how fast items are being replenished at the store level. Simply stated, we're measuring all products across all stores and all time. This data set is primarily focused on convenience outlets, which we believe is a growth opportunity for CBD and cannabis as legislation allows. Over the next few slides, we're going to focus on category dollars, share, and SKU counts, because let's face it, money talks. And if I'm wondering where to place my bets, I want to know the dollar potential behind my investment. So if we look at product form, specifically according to dollar share, gummies are number one. It's an easy way for consumers to see if they like it, and it's typically number one in all of our studies. We see vapes' drastic decline in the back half of 2019 due to the vape crisis, but again, expect these numbers to regain strength in 2020. Topicals had an increase during this time, but this is driven by additional distribution points. This is positive as we see outlets adopting additional CBD items in their stores. I anticipate additional grocery and packaged items like beverage will continue to be drastically lower, driven by legal uncertainty and major manufacturers not yet entering the space. Here is a trended look at dollars over the past year. You can see that in the last 6 months, vape has been losing share while gummies has regained some share. This shows us that consumer preference has changed. Topical share has also been increasing steadily. Notice the significant uptick in topical. This is due to expanded distribution to new stores within our data set. And the increase in gummies and pills is due to one particular manufacturer being newly carried by a convenience distributor. This is important to keep in mind as you evaluate the products you're carrying. Are your customer habits changing? According to this chart, it's possible that consumers are open to trying new product forms. Take a look at your assortment and be sure to carry various types of products for your customers. Okay, this chart is showing the actual dollars of what is bringing in the most dollars at retail. The continuous growth of topicals is most notable. We see again the uptick in topicals due to the expanded distribution, along with that increase in gummies and pills being newly distributed. Looking at the number of SKUs carried at retail, we've seen the number of unique items in the CBD category increase 36% in the past year, from 247 in January 2019 to 337 in January 2020, which is incredibly important to retailers to see what stores are carrying the most of. No surprise that vape SKUs have declined significantly in the past 3 months, while all other forms have continued to gradually rise as SKU assortment at retail expands. This shows the receptiveness at retail and what types of each they're bringing into their stores. Okay, so we know retailers are adding these items to their stores, but how are they performing for them? We see dollars per SKU sliding as the number of SKUs at retail increase. The expanding retail outlets for topicals is driving the category increase. This shows me that while retailers are open to bringing in more products, they may not be choosing the right items for their stores. Okay, I know there's a lot of color here, but this chart is pretty exciting. As you can see, these colors represent dollar share by manufacturer. We don't have them labeled because the industry is still somewhat behaving like the Wild West, with market share changing so fast, there are abundant opportunities for any manufacturer. As you can see, one of the companies fizzled out because of the vape crisis before end of 2019. The green and purple areas essentially represent new manufacturers entering the space. You see that the first half of 2019 remained fairly stable, while we see a difference over the past 6 months with rapid new entrants, capturing nearly a third of the market. We anticipate this fast-moving behavior until the marketplace settles down. Okay, remember, I mentioned we would be looking at various marketplace measurement sources. Well, here is Nielsen's 2019 estimate of the size of the hemp CBD market being 1 billion to 1.25 billion, with the expectation to grow to 6 billion in 2025. Notice, Nielsen estimates are typically more conservative than others that you may have seen. We thought it was important to note the exponential increase of the potential market size. Also, these numbers somewhat mirror the consumer usage study that Steve reported earlier, where consumers, when asked, noted most frequently purchasing CBD cannabis items online, at vape and tobacco stores, and specialty stores. Here's another lens. Headset shared with us their dispensary sales projections for Washington, Nevada, Colorado, and California, showing CBD sales within those states, growing beyond 35% market share of total non-inhalable sales. You can see here, very little CBD was initially distributed in dispensaries, this data going back to 2016 and growing to 2019, end of 2019 actually. And it shows strong growth within non-inhalables and a market not to be overlooked by dispensaries. Looking again at dispensary data, while edibles have the largest dollar sales, the share of CBD within edibles is the lowest of all categories. It's interesting to see the over-indexing of CBD's product share within the other categories at dispensaries, indicating that consumers are purchasing these forms predominantly for health and wellness application. However, when reviewing CBD to THC ratios, gummies offer the widest array of CBD choices. This view enables us to see that the left side of this chart with the higher CBD ratio is focused more of the health aspects of CBD and cannabis. This is an area of interest for MSA as we analyze this in greater depth. This data helps to confirm that the 1-to-1 ratio of CBD and THC continues to dominate in the dispensary market. 1-to-1 ratios, as you most probably know, are typically more balanced for people who can tolerate THC and are looking for a psychoactive response within a moderate dose. In addition, we drilled into 2 dispensaries in the same market. Let's see what we can learn from this. CBD accounts for 4% of sales for dispensary 1 and 3% of sales for dispensary 2. We believe that the 2018 Farm Bill and the ability for consumers to buy online or at traditional brick and mortar stores is the reason why consumers may be less likely to go to a dispensary for their hemp CBD products. Now, looking even further at these 2 dispensaries and the breakdown of their sales, Pills and tinctures are the most popular CBD forms for dispensary 1, while vape and tinctures are the most popular CBD forms for dispensary 2. Notice pet food. It's both having a decent percentage here, 6 and 7% in each of these two different dispensaries. It seems like pet can be an important item for consumers to seek from their dispensary, which also validates a point Steve made earlier within the consumer survey, where a third of respondents reported purchasing CBD products for their pets. One area that we're paying particular interest to is the health and wellness application of CBD and cannabis to aid in the treatment of severe pain as well as the opioid and vape crisis. Stay with me. I know this is a lot of information. I'll quickly touch upon why we believe this is an area that calls for further research and legislation efforts. The rate of US deaths from drug overdose have grown exponentially over 40 years. The opioid crisis got increased attention when the year-over-year death rate grew by 24% in 2017. Few US medical doctors are even suggesting how patients can withdraw from using opioids. We know that Athletes for Care reports athletes' use of cannabis helps them withdraw from opioid use and have recommended that the NFL change player contracts to permit the use of cannabis. Cannabis has been proven to prevent overdosing and has been recognized in Canada to reduce opioid use among veterans. It's interesting here is that the opioid US overdose deaths dropped 5% in 2018, but grew again in early 2019. There's a lot to be learned here, and we look forward to analyzing this drop in greater detail. Because US drug deaths in states legalizing cannabis are much lower than other states. Multiple consumer surveys note its use for treatment of opioid addiction, with 10% of all US adults being in favor of such use. This indicates a tremendous opportunity for cannabis in health and wellness research and application. This is an exciting area for MSA and other research companies to continue to monitor and support the legal cannabis industry. We saw earlier the impact of vaping and the vaping crisis on CBD and cannabis sales. Dispensaries recovered sales much faster than convenience stores. We attribute this to the importance of education. Dispensaries and specialty retail thrive due to spending additional time consulting with their consumers and providing additional product information. Okay, key findings and takeaways. Now that we've discussed consumer attitudes, profiles, and of cannabis users, the US market trends, and industry opportunities, here's what we've summed up as the key takeaways. Internet searches and consumer attitudes suggest positive sales outlook for both CBD and cannabis, as well as the consumer's desire to learn more about these items, making education a top priority for this industry. Younger consumers and existing tobacco users have been the fastest adopters, with health and wellness being a leading cause of use. So if you're a retailer who sells tobacco, be sure to place the CBD and cannabis items near the register. Otherwise, if you don't have tobacco products in your store, place these items near other health-oriented items in your store. I mentioned before about the industry behaving similar to the Wild West. Barriers of entry continue to be low, while C-store adoption remains low. We anticipate convenience stores and other brick and mortar outlets to see rapid growth once major manufacturers enter the space. For any retailers who are getting started with CBD and cannabis, products in the gummies, oils, topicals, and vapor categories appear to be the easiest to launch. Also noting that CBD items should not be overlooked. We saw that 35% of the non-inhalable market was attributed to CBD products in dispensaries, even though the 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio items remain to dominate in the dispensary market. Wow, we made it. I know that we covered a lot of information in a short period of time, but I hope that you found the information to be insightful and discovered new go-to-market strategies or validated what you're already doing today. We really appreciate you tuning in. Also, a special thanks and shout out to NCIA for having us today and for their continued advocacy efforts in the legal cannabis industry and providing these educational sessions to their value members. We'll try to cover as many questions as possible. Please submit them now via the chat function. And also, if you don't have any questions, we'd still love to hear your ideas for future webinar content.
Okay, we're open for questions now. So I see one coming in is asking about our plan for direction for future research. So one of the things that we're looking at, focused on the medicinal aspects of cannabis, is integrating some traditional healthcare data sources. So our company does work with all the major labs. We have access to claims, EMR data, of course, the survey data sources that we mentioned, and our own data. So we do have a way of using our the identification engine to link those at the patient or person level, which enables us to bring all these additional health attributes into the analysis. So we look forward to presenting future future research based on that integration of those data sources. So I see some more questions are coming in now. So bear with. Search results is one of the questions. So perhaps this, I'm not sure if I'm understanding it fully, but I'm thinking maybe it's talking about research supporting cannabis helping with opioid use disorder. So we are aware of around 20 major studies that date back to 2009 indicating its effectiveness. Of course, I don't know that I think every single one of them in the end says that, well, more research is suggested. But, our opinion is that there's plenty of indication, right? There's those studies. If you talk to patients, I'm sure that many or all the people on the call probably are seeing firsthand how, how cannabis is able to help consumers. So, we think that it's better to act now on what and, there is some controversy out there about the 3 approved treatments already for the opioid use disorder. And, one of them essentially just, helps people if they've overdosed, right? The Narcan or naloxone. And, but the great thing about cannabis is it's not, as far as we know, as anyone knows, I believe, no one has overdosed or died from taking cannabis. So, I think there's strong arguments there. Jen, you want to take the next question here? I see more coming in.
Right. So I see the notation in regards to the data showing 20 states versus the status of the other 30. So those 20 states that Steve was talking about within the consumer attitude and usage study is the 20 states that were surveyed and the different cities within each of those to show kind of a representative sample for the total U.S. with over 87,000 respondents covering those 20 states. So that's why you're not going to see the respondent waves or surveys that cover each individual state, because those states are also represented within that 20.
Okay, so I see another question here that says, do you have any data points on how much THC dosage casual users consume per session compared to hardcore rec users? We do have that data. I don't know that we've broken it out that way. If you reach out to us with an email, we'd be more than happy to analyze that and get back in touch with you. It does bring to mind an interesting story I heard. I remember, I don't know if I can remember the brand, but there was a brand of a product in the dispensaries that had come out that was actually, it's kind of targeted at folks who are maybe new to cannabis, maybe looking for a little bit lower THC dosage, and you know, they brought this to market. I think it was in the form of a vape pen, and they were really struggling with that product. It just wasn't selling, and you know, I guess what they found was that the dispensaries really weren't promoting it, because I think the folks in the dispensaries had a little bit different orientation, and then they changed the way they were selling the product to, you know, basically asking somebody, what would you recommend for my girlfriend? And found all of a sudden that when they positioned it that way in the marketplace, and they got the people to ask that way, all of a sudden, you know, their sales really just took off. So do we have another?
I see another question in regards to, will the slides be available afterwards? Absolutely. So I think within the week, NCIA will have the slides sent to all participants. We'll get that email drafted. And once I know it's a lot of data that we kind of just threw at you, and lots of discoveries and validations contained within. But if you, upon review, have additional questions, my contact info as well as Steve's is included at the end, and we'd be happy to follow up with attendees individually after the session.
Okay, so there's a few other questions here. There's a question about the Nielsen break apart of specialty. Actually, they did give us a pretty detailed, it's not exactly the same as it was broken out in the consumer survey. So Nielsen had conducted their segmentation a bit differently. It's a little bit complex. For example, you might have noticed in Jen's slide that online or e-commerce appears in multiple segments, which you know, I guess from our perspective, we would have probably ourselves chosen to do it a little bit differently. So I guess I'll again ask if you would kindly send us an email. We'd be happy to give you the breakout on that segmentation. So please do send us that email. Sorry, we're reviewing the questions here as they're flowing in.
Right. So I see one in regards to consumer attitudes towards CBD regionally, and if we've taken that view for tobacco users, as well as when recommending to place near the wellness products. So we have not necessarily sliced and diced the data in a regional view to take a look at how CBD performs better or worse when placed next to tobacco or health and wellness at a regional level. But as far as the total US level, we are seeing that CBD products, when in a fully legal state, experience the highest gain or traction within the market. And because nearly half of CBD users are also tobacco users, it makes it an easy correlation of these different placements throughout the store. So not that we would necessarily tell someone to only put them at the register, but to just kind of be in tune with both sets of consumers and the reason for their usage.
So I see, actually, there was a follow-on question from the question about the research or federal research. So I see that it continues and asks about migraines, cancer, PMS treatment. So one of the things I actually mentioned just when we started the question and answer session was about our integrating other healthcare data sources, which we're really excited about. We've done this in other areas. We're just starting to do this with in the cannabis space, but at least in the case of, say, cancer, where there is data available to be able to be integrated, we certainly can do that and look for correlations. Migraines is a little harder. I mean, you can really only get at that by asking people about, you know, their headache. So, you know, I think we'll probably focus in on the areas where there is data that can be analyzed. I'm looking to see if there are other questions. There's one that looks like it's directed at NCIA, so I'll let our partners at NCIA answer that one if they so choose.
No, thanks for letting us know about that. We'll look into
have
it a
any
little bit more.
additional questions? Otherwise, I think we'll probably close it out.
Right, and as mentioned, our contact information is included at the end of the slideshow, and please feel free to reach out to Steve and I. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions or even discuss further different ways that you would like to see education and research brought back to this industry. But thank you guys very, very much for your time and attention.
Thanks for joining. Thanks to NCIA for inviting us. Have a great afternoon.